Shalom. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to read in Matthew chapter 8, continuing in chapter 8. The last video was the first part. This is going to be verses 5 through 13. Remember, this section in Matthew is talking about miracles that show the authority of Jesus, and that's what this is about. This second section here is about a centurion, a Roman centurion, who approaches Jesus for healing for his servant. So let's read this. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him asking for help. "Lord," he said, "my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly." And Jesus said to him, "Shall I come and heal him?" The centurion replied, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, that one, come, and he comes. I say to that servant, do this, he does it." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed, and he said to those following him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west, and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Then Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, let it be done just as you believed it would." And his servant was healed at that moment. So there's a lot in this section here. There's the stuff about the relationship between Gentiles and Jews. In Jewish law and in Jewish custom, you did not go to the home of a Gentile. You did not eat with a Gentile. A Gentile is anyone who's not a Jew, in this case a Roman centurion. And Romans, in particular, Roman officers and Roman soldiers were not well liked in Israel. They were seen as the occupying force, and they were roundly hated. They didn't want to, the Jews didn't want them in their country. They wanted a freedom from Roman rule. And so here is a centurion. Now there's a parallel story to this that is recorded in the Gospel of Luke. And in Luke we get a little more detail, because what we find is the Roman centurion sent Jewish leaders to Jesus on his behalf. The centurion didn't actually go face to face and talk to Jesus, but he sent these Jewish leaders. And the Jewish leaders said, "Come to his home. He actually deserves this. He's such a righteous Gentile that he even helped to pay for the construction of our synagogue." So they were saying all these wonderful things about him to Jesus, and Jesus was ready to go. But then the word got back to him, "You don't need to come to my home." Now, this Roman centurion would understand, by the way, that a Jew coming to his home would create all sorts of problems for that Jew. And so in his mind, he's simply saying this: look, I get authority. I understand authority. I am a man in authority. I'm a man under authority. I know what it means when I say to one soldier, do this, or to another one, or a servant, do this. I get it. And he's saying to Jesus, I understand your authority. Now contrast that with the Jewish leaders, the Pharisees, the scribes, the Sadducees. They kept asking Jesus over and over again, by what authority are you doing all these things? You're healing and you're teaching, and what gives you, where's the authority for this comes from? The Roman centurion saw what they did not see, and the Roman centurion believed when they didn't believe. And what is fascinating is the faith of this centurion actually shocked Jesus into a sense of amazement. In fact, the Greek word there is ithaumason, and it means to be marveling at, to be wondered, and the implication is to admire this. Now, think of this: a Jew admiring the faith of a Gentile. That's radical. That's radical. Okay, don't let that slip away. Okay, that's important. So here is this servant who is paralyzed. This Roman centurion cared very much for his servant. It's important to understand something. Roman centurions were paid way more than the average soldier, so they could actually and often bought servants and had one or even more servants, usually at least one. And so this servant meant a lot to him. And oftentimes, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, servants in that day and time, slaves in that day and time, oftentimes were beloved family members. That don't mean they were related by blood, but they were considered to be as much a part of the family. And in many cases, when Romans, aristocrats and centurions and generals died, they would leave part of their heritage. They would actually leave property and land and other things like that to servants. And there were servants who would be in charge of other servants, and oftentimes they would become just as powerful as the actual Roman aristocrat that owned them. So this is not an unusual relationship between a centurion and a servant. He cared very much for his servant, and he actually wanted him to be healed. He didn't see him as just old property that, I could just let him die and I'll buy a new one. He didn't see that. He actually cared for this man. And here is Jesus. He's listening to this man, and he says, man, even among my own people, in my own land, I don't even see that kind of faith. That's a powerful statement. And then he says something else that's really fascinating. The time is going to come. There's going to be a great feast. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the great patriarchs of our faith. There's going to be the feast, and that's a capital the, T-H-E, the feast. And this is referred to in the book of Revelation, chapter 19, as the great wedding feast of the Lamb. Now, on top of that, Jesus says many are coming from the east and from the west, and they will all take their places at this feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And what Jesus is doing is echoing what the prophet Isaiah said in chapter 25 and Isaiah chapter 56. He describes how Gentiles will be completely included in the plan and in the work of God. And here Jesus is saying, yeah, just like this centurion who has faith in me, there's going to be the great feast, the ultimate great feast. And even the Gentiles who believed will be there, rightfully there, with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And if you are a believer in Jesus, you'll be there too.